He threw me out of the house. Years later, he asked me for a job. The day my brother told me to leave the house, he didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. His words were calm, slow, and sharp enough to cut deeper than shouting ever could. "This house is not for daughters," he said, sitting on the sofa like a king delivering a final judgment. "You're married now. Go live where you belong." I stood near the doorway with a small bag in my hand, listening as if he were talking about someone else. The walls I had grown up between suddenly felt unfamiliar, like they were watching me leave without sympathy. My mother was no longer alive to speak for me. My father had passed years earlier, and the one person who was supposed to protect me, my elder brother, had decided I was no longer family. I didn't argue, I didn't beg, I simply nodded. What I didn't say was that I had helped pay for this house, that I had worked extra hours to support my parents when my brother was too busy, that my name was never added to the papers because girls don't need property. I walked out quietly. The gate closed behind me with a sound that echoed in my chest for years. For the first few months, survival became my only goal. My marriage didn't last long after that. Financial pressure, emotional distance, and constant reminders that I was a burden pushed everything apart. When it ended, I didn't cry much. I had already learned how to swallow pain without making a sound. I rented a single room near a noisy street. At night, traffic replaced family conversations. In the mornings, I woke up early, ironed my clothes carefully, and went to work at a small office where no one knew my story. I was invisible there, and that was a relief. Every paycheck mattered. I saved aggressively. No shopping, no outings, no excuses. While others complained about long hours, I stayed late and learned. I asked questions. I watched how things worked. I memorized patterns, mistakes, opportunities. When people talked over me, I listened harder. When they underestimated me, I wrote their names down in my mind. Not out of hatred, but as reminders of why I could never afford to stop. Years passed. The girl who once stood silently at her brother's door no longer existed. I moved jobs, then moved again. I upgraded my skills, took online courses at night, read books instead of scrolling, invested small amounts when I barely had enough. Every decision was slow and careful. Failure visited often. Once, I lost almost all my savings in a business idea that collapsed within months. Another time, a partner walked away with money I couldn't recover. I sat on the floor of my apartment that night, staring at the wall, wondering if my brother had been right. But I got up the next morning anyway. I learned something important during those years. Revenge doesn't come from anger, it comes from consistency. By the time I turned 35, I owned a small but growing company. It wasn't flashy. It didn't need to be. It was stable, respected, and profitable. Clients trusted us because we delivered. Employees stayed because I treated them like humans, not tools. I never spoke about my family. My past stayed locked inside me like an old photograph, faded but unforgettable. One afternoon, my assistant knocked on my office door. "There's a man here for an interview," she said. "He doesn't have an appointment, but he insisted." I almost told her to send him away. Almost. Then she added, "He says your name. He knows you." Something shifted in my chest. I told her to let him in. When the door opened, I didn't recognize him immediately. The man standing there looked smaller than the brother I remembered. His shoulders were slightly bent. His hair was thinner. His confidence cracked in places he tried to hide. But then our eyes met. He recognized me instantly. For a moment, neither of us spoke. I watched his face go through emotions he couldn't control. Shock, disbelief, discomfort, and finally something close to fear. "You?" he said quietly. "You work here?" I smiled politely. "Yes, please, have a seat." He hesitated before sitting down in the chair across my desk, the same type of chair I used to clean around in our old house while he relaxed on sofas. The silence stretched. "I didn't know this was your company," he finally said. I nodded. "It is," he swallowed. "I'm looking for work. Things have been difficult." I didn't ask how. I already knew. Life had not been kind to him after pushing me out. The property disputes, the debts, the people he trusted who turned on him when money disappeared. Everything he once controlled had slipped through his fingers. The house he claimed was no longer his. And now he was here, in my office, asking for an opportunity. He handed me his resume with shaking hands. I glanced at it, though I didn't need to. His experience was outdated, his skills average. Years ago, I might have felt anger rising in my chest, but all I felt now was calm. "I'll have HR review this," I said neutrally. He leaned forward. "Please, I really need this job. I know I made mistakes." I looked at him, really looked at him. This was the man who told me daughters don't deserve property, the man who watched me leave without stopping me, the man who never once called to ask if I was alive. "I don't mix family and business," I said. "You taught me that." His face dropped. "I wasn't fair to you," he whispered. "I know that now." I stood up, signaling the meeting was over. "Fairness isn't something people realize when it's convenient," I said gently. "It's something they choose when it costs them." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't insult him. I didn't need to. He left my office slowly, shoulders heavier than when he entered. Later that evening, I sat alone after everyone had gone home. The office lights were dim. The city outside buzzed with life. For the first time in years, I thought about that day at the gate, the bag in my hand, the silence. I realized something important. I didn't win because he lost. I won because I refused to disappear. The best revenge wasn't turning him away. It was becoming someone he never believed I could be. I locked my office, walked out into the night, and breathed freely, finally at peace with a chapter that no longer had power over me. If this story touched your heart, like, share, and subscribe for more real-life revenge stories.